Hey guys, we're gonna roast some Guatemala Antigua today. So let's get started. I'm gonna turn on my machine and I'll let you see the roaster. And this is Guatemala Antigua Santa Ines, and they recommend at Sweet Maria's for this to be a city plus to a full city. That means how darkly you will roast it. It's got a lot of the hints of caramelized sugars, subtle smoked sweetness, hop notes of walnut, marshmallow, almond marzipan, hazelnut chocolate, and it's got a well-integrated acidity, and it's good for espresso. So, as you can see, the green beans are, they're a dull green, so you'll see them get brighter as the heat is applied. I have my roaster on 260 degrees Celsius. And the temperature today is pretty cold. It's January in Tennessee, so today is warmer than it's been. It's in the 40s right now, and it's evening, about 5 o'clock, so that's not too bad. The ambient temperature does change how your coffee will roast to some extent, but it doesn't play a huge impact on it. I have about 200 grams of coffee in my roaster. I just love the smell. It's got a botanical, kind of grassy hay smell to it right now. I'll read some facts about Guatemalan coffee here. Many believe that coffee was first introduced to Guatemala by the Jesuits around 1750, though there are accounts of it being grown and served in the country in 1747. As in El Salvador, coffee only became an important crop in Guatemala after 1856, when the invention of chemical dyes reduced demand for indigo, which was at that time the main cash crop. So, there's a lot of coffee growing regions in Guatemala. Especially Antigua is probably the best known coffee producing region in Guatemala, and one of the best known in the world. The region is named after the city of Antigua, famous for its Spanish architecture. The region attained a denomination of origin in 2000 under the name Genuine Antigua Coffee, after the market had become devalued by coffee fraudulently labeled as Antigua. This has prevented coffee from other origins being sold as Antigua, but it has not stopped the fraudulent practice of bringing cherries in from other regions to be processed there. Now, coffee, when you hear cherries, that's not what you would buy a cherry in the grocery store. That is the pit of a coffee cherry, the fruit of the coffee plant. Now, I'm going to stop myself here and just point out how brightly the beans are looking. as the heat is applied, they go from a green. Some of them even are yellow and brown in here. Some of them are roasting quicker than others, but just wanted to point that out. Yeah, when you hear the word cherry, that's the pit of the coffee, cherry, and the skin and the fruit are pulped off of the pit. The pit is then dried, and that's the green bean. So nonetheless, it is possible to find clearly traceable coffees from Antigua, and while some are overpriced, others are of excellent quality and are worth seeking out. The altitude here that it's grown is 1,500 to 1,700 meters, and the harvest time is from January to March. Some of the popular varieties are Bourbon, Caturra, and Catay. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Catuai. So many Guatemalan farmers have their own wet mills and coffee production facilities, which aids the traceability of the beans. We can see our coffee getting mostly yellow. There's a few green ones in there, and the green ones are bright. So it's turning into the next stage of a kind of a yellow, light brown color. And the smell is getting less hay-like and more of like a baked bread smell. Now I'm reading from the World Atlas of Coffee, 2nd edition by James Hoffman, if you're interested in any of that information for yourself. You should be able to find that book on Amazon, as well as the Barwell roaster that I'm using on Amazon as well. Guys, it's not hard to roast your own coffee. You can do it at home. You don't even need this kind of a setup with a roaster. You can use a popcorn popper and get you some green beans online and plug it in and roast them. I encourage you to experiment with that. As you can see towards the middle of the drum that's churning, you see some bright green beans. I don't know if you can see it very well. Towards the outside, most of them are yellow, tan, light brown, a few dark brown. We are about 7 minutes into our roast, so we're getting close to the halfway point of what I like it roasted as. But like I've said before, I tend to like my coffee roasted darker than most people do. I got accustomed to Starbucks coffee when I worked there for so many years and was ruined for anything else and became quite a coffee snob to where I have a hard time buying a cup of coffee from anywhere that I enjoy as much as my own coffee at home. So if you're anything like that, you should definitely look into roasting your own beans. It's quite gratifying. It's a lot of fun. Okay, you can see it's getting a lot darker already. It's interesting how different beans from different origins roast differently. These look smaller. These are roasting quickly. I don't know if that depends upon the elevation of where they were grown, but it has a lot to do with the water content and the density of the bean. I'm excited to try these. I might do a video of what's called cupping. Oh, did you hear that? That was the first crack at about 8 minutes and 26 seconds. So you heard that little pop sound. That's the first crack. So we'll be hearing more of that. I would like to do a video showing you how to cup coffee. There is an art to tasting coffees. And what you do is you take fresh roasted beans after they've gone through their off-gassing, and you grind them, and you boil them. You brew them with boiled water, hot water, and then a crust will form at the top. And when that crust is broken, the grounds mostly all will drop to the bottom of the cup. Oh, it's starting to smell really smoky. And there's another pop. So after the grounds fall to the bottom, you scoop it up with a wide round spoon and you slurp the coffee. When you slurp the coffee, it sprays the coffee along your tongue, which is your taste palate, and you can pick up many different nuances in tasting the coffee that way. People who purchase coffee, people who are professional roasters, even people who run cafes and work in cafes are well acquainted with the art of tasting coffees and cupping coffees. So what they do is they will do that and spit out the coffee because they're not going to be drinking all that coffee all day. So they will spray it on their taste palate and then spit it out and taste another one. And when you taste them in succession, you can pick up many of the different nuances. And there's forms that you can get for filling in your tasting notes. And like I've said in previous videos, when you taste coffee, you're not going to actually pick up actual flavors. It's going to be more of an essence of what something represents when you eat it. So if something makes you pucker and it's sour, that would be a citrus, lemony, acidic, tart. You would use words like that. And after you taste so many coffees, you really do get quite a repertoire of terms that you can use to describe the coffees based on the texture and the flavors that you find in the experiences of eating and drinking, such as body, which is the mouth feel, how the coffee coats your mouth, or if it's thin or if it's thick, if there's much of an aftertaste. If it doesn't have an aftertaste, then that's called a clean finish. And something that does have an aftertaste would be lingering. Something that's thick would be full-bodied. Think milk in comparison to the texture of drinking water. So all these different attributes come out in the cupping process. And that's how a lot of importers will purchase their coffee. And of course, coffees are on a scale, a grade. So you can have, the SCA is what determines the scale for coffee grading. And there's a lot to be learned by myself of all the parameters around that, but it's definitely something exciting to get into. There's no wrong answers. The more you taste, the more you pick up on, and the better you are at describing what you're tasting. You can see the lighter pieces are the chaff, the parchment coming off the bean, and you can see that dark brown. It looks pretty nice. It looks pretty consistent. I remember when I first started tasting coffee, and I just thought, well, it all tastes like coffee. But once you start tasting them next to each other, coffee can taste so different. You can have something that's more juicy and berry. You can have one that's more lemony, one that's more earthy, smoky. And the fun part is the roasting comes into that too. You can have two exact coffees, the same origin, and you can roast it differently. So if I roast this today and then I roast the rest of the beans that I have in this bag tomorrow and roast it with different settings, I can pull out different flavors and taste them next to each other. So it's really fascinating. And then you can get into blending coffees. If you listen right now, you can hear some snaps. And those tiny little snaps, I believe, is our second crack. So you can see it's getting pretty dark. And with that those little tiny snaps, that's going to be getting into the second crack. Latin American coffees do tend to have more acidity. They tend to be a little bit tangier. Usually a thinner mouthfeel, a lighter bodied coffee. So it's interesting to play around with the blending and the roasting to see what kind of results that you can achieve that way. And it's smelling very smoky. I'm going to push it a little longer just to see how much darker I can get it. I'm sure you can hear that. That's the second crack. Put it back on. It's a beautiful sound. Like I said before, a lot of people would consider this burnt or over roasted, but I tend to enjoy the flavor development better in the darker roasted coffee. So my scale of darkness would be darker than many. So I'm going to keep roasting. I like to see oiliness in the beans. It actually also brings out a sweetness. I think that's due to the caramelization that happens. I don't know, if you have ever cooked onions, you cook them low and slow and cook them till they're brown, they're going to taste sweet, and that's due to the caramelization. So it's all very scientific. This is looking and smelling fabulous. This is not hard to do if you are interested in trying it yourself. Just go to Sweet Maria's and get some green coffee beans, and you can even do it with a cast iron skillet on the stovetop. If you're willing to smoke up your house, I would recommend opening some windows, but you can just move the beans along on the, all you need really is heat and movement to roast coffee beans. Yeah, they're looking really nice and dark now. We're at about 17 minutes. I'm going to push them just a little bit further. I'm really excited to try these. A lot of times what we do is we put them right in our espresso machine. And it is amazing how different our espressos taste with these different origins of beans. And even if they're all roasted dark. Alright, I think I'm about ready to end it right here. They're looking nice and shiny. Alright, isn't that beautiful? I'm going to let you get a look at that. Alright. Alright, I'm going to cool these off, separate the chaff, and thank you for roasting with me. Take care.